Most people are asleep to a live and loving humanity as brother and sister. The television has conditioned people to follow the media and to consume products that are in effect killing people slowly, yet effectively. Fluoride in our water and toothpaste for over half a century has done a good job of tampering with the human innate ability to awaken their third eye and come to epiphany. Most of you don't understand what that means, but it's real. Marijuana, which helps stimulate and help the process, has been demonized and made illegal, with some prison sentences in the US equaling those of murders. Humans already are slaves to their conditioned needs and behaviors, instilled into us by sociopathic manipulators, commercialism, fashion, sports, politics, Hollywood. These which we are ultimately focused on keep our mind off the bigger picture and the subtle but consistent acts of deception and destruction by corrupt and insane megalithic corporations under the power of very powerful rich people spell doom for the planet and the people living on it unless drastic changes are effected. Mainstream media in the US is run by all of 6 corporations, and so getting an objective and honest viewpoint nowadays can only really be sought in the political satire of Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, who, unafraid of ill-begotten criticism by media horror critics, tell it like it is in a funny way that sticks and opens eyes. The government of the United States is perhaps the most epic worldly body to ever grace the earth, except when it's being inherently evil. The forefathers could not foresee the abuse of powers that are so pervasive now, and if they did, they'd rise from their graves and start a rebellion. It is unfortunate that because of so much conditioning, emaciated education, disparity between rich and poor, and the extreme egotistical, selfish, and short-sighted attitudes and behaviors of the middle class, real heroes seem very hard to come by. Ones that would sooner die to save their people, and beyond that, the brothers and sisters of the world, from annihilation and abject slavery. These heroes exist, and some are awake, yet some are asleep, and some have not been born yet. And for all that came before us, we can certainly take a few pointers from them. The 2000 election between Bush and Gore was a complete fraud, and Bush was illegally appointed the President of the United States. Some argued the legitimacy of George Bush's election by the Electoral College, but his father, being a former president and having sway with the Supreme Court, on which he installed Clarence Thomas and David Souter, George W. Bush had his father's power on his side, which is why I disagree wholeheartedly with the children of former presidents having the right to run for an election. There is just way too much power on their side, and with that, the huge potential for corruption, as I contend, is the case with 9/11. So the USA, the most powerful nation in the world, was then being run by a former coke-abusing cowboy yeehaw who acted retarded and often exposed his lack of aptitude. Throughout and after the attacks, his entire staff seemed like they were out to lunch and useless, but in fact dodging the real questions and covering up the truth with lies. George Bush bullied the country into believing the official account and demonized dissenters at the UN, an approach widely held by the forefathers as just wrong. In the few months prior to 9/11, Zionist Dov Zakheim, along with Dick Cheney and a few other bad guys, drafted a document called the Project for the New American Century, which you know by now has a statement, paraphrased, absent some catastrophic catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. They said this to secure their vision according to the PNAC document. Sooner. They were implying that a scheme had to be cooked up that would fool the population, and further to that, the world, that would enable them to carry out, in all candidness, horror on the world.